You're sitting in your office at 9:47 on a Friday night, billing a client $450 an hour for work you finished 3 days ago. The document is done. It's been done since Tuesday, but you've kept it open on your screen, scrolling through it occasionally, adding a comma here, deleting one there, logging each interaction as a quarter-hour increment because the billing system rounds up and nobody audits the decimals. You've billed 11 hours on a motion that took 4. The client is a logistics company with $200 million in annual revenue. They won't notice. They never notice. Their in-house counsel reviews your invoices the way people read terms and conditions, scrolling past the numbers to reach the signature line. A senior partner named Alderman taught you this. Your 3rd year at the firm, he took you to dinner and explained the economics of partnership. The firm expected 2,200 billable hours per year. That's 42 hours per week of work you can charge to a client. The actual work required to generate 42 billable hours is about 55 hours per week when you account for non-billable time, administrative tasks, business development, the hours you spend on work that no specific client can be charged for. Alderman said the partners who made it billed 2,400. The ones who made it comfortably billed 2,600. He asked how many hours were in a week. You said 168. He smiled and said the ones who billed 2,600 understand that a week has exactly as many hours as you need it to. You were 30 years old. Georgetown Law, top 15%, federal clerkship, a recommendation letter calling you one of the finest legal minds the judge had supervised in 20 years. You believed in meritocracy the way people believe in weather. It was just there. Alderman didn't take that from you. He just showed you where the rain came in. You learned to pad. Everyone padded. It was institutional. A 2-hour research task became 3.5. A 30-minute phone call became an hour. A document review that took an afternoon became a full day. Nobody taught you this explicitly. It was absorbed through observation, the way associates learned which partners to avoid on Monday mornings and which secretaries controlled access to the good conference rooms. The culture didn't produce fraud. It produced flexibility, a willingness to interpret time as a resource rather than a fixed quantity. By your 6th year, you were billing 2,500 hours. By your 8th, 2,700. You made partner at 10 years, which was fast. The announcement came with a $40,000 bonus and a handshake from the managing partner who told you the firm's future was built on people like you. He meant it as a compliment. You took it as one. You didn't yet understand that what he was complimenting was your willingness to build revenue from air. Your salary climbed. $820,000 a year before bonuses. Corner office, 22nd floor, a view of the river that you stopped seeing 3 years ago. Your base draw was $55,000 a month. Your mortgage was $6,200. Your kid's school was $42,000 per child, and you had 2. Your ex-wife got $9,000 a month in alimony because the judge used your best earning year as the baseline, and your best earning year was the year you billed 2,600 hours by doing exactly what Alderman taught you over a $200 steak. The math works if you don't look at it too closely. The math always works if you don't look at it too closely. The real corruption started with a client named Waverly Industrial, mid-sized manufacturing company, $80 million in revenue, family-owned. They hired you to defend a wrongful termination lawsuit filed by a plant manager they'd fired for reporting safety violations. The case was straightforward. The plant manager had documented everything: internal memos, photographs of violations, emails to supervisors who ignored him. He had a whistleblower claim that was going to survive summary judgment and probably win at trial. The evidence was that clean. You told Waverly's CEO the truth in your first meeting. The case was defensible but risky. Settlement was the smart move. A reasonable number would be $400,000, maybe $500,000 with strong negotiation. The CEO, a man named Pritchard, who'd inherited the company from his father and ran it with the confidence of someone who'd never earned anything, told you he didn't pay lawyers to settle. He paid lawyers to win. He wanted the case destroyed. He wanted the plant manager humiliated. He wanted a message sent to every employee who might consider reporting anything to anyone. You should have pushed back. You should have explained that litigation isn't therapy, and courtrooms aren't instruments of revenge. But Pritchard was worth $1.2 million a year in billings to your firm. Not just this case. Insurance defense, contract disputes, regulatory compliance, employment matters. Waverly was your book of business. Losing Waverly meant losing your draw. Losing your draw meant losing the house, the school, the alimony, the math again. Always the math. You built a defense strategy designed not to win, but to exhaust. You filed motions you knew would fail because each one required the plaintiff's attorney to respond. You requested documents you didn't need because processing the requests consumed the plaintiff's resources. You scheduled depositions that lasted 8 hours when 3 would have sufficed because every hour in a conference room was an hour. The plant manager wasn't working his new job and wasn't paying his own legal bills. You turned litigation into a war of attrition, and your client had deeper pockets and more patience than a fired plant manager living on savings. The plaintiff's attorney, a solo practitioner named Okonkwo, called you after the 4th round of discovery requests. She was direct. She said you were burying her client in process, and she knew it was deliberate. She said the case had merit, and you knew it. She asked if you were prepared to explain your strategy to a judge who might see it as abuse of discovery. You told her you were zealously advocating for your client. The phrase tasted like copper in your mouth, but it was legally accurate, and that was all that mattered. The plant manager settled for $175,000, less than half of what you'd originally advised Waverly to offer. His attorney took a third. He walked away with $116,000 for a career he'd lost and a principal he'd been punished for defending. Pritchard was delighted. He took you to dinner and ordered a bottle of wine that cost $800 and told you you'd earned every dollar of the $340,000 your firm billed on the case. You drank the wine. It was excellent. You told yourself the plant manager got something. $116,000 wasn't nothing. The violations he'd reported were eventually addressed because the lawsuit generated enough publicity that OSHA conducted an inspection. The system worked, just slowly and expensively, and in a way that ground down the person who activated it. You were a component of that system. Not the villain, just the friction. The billing escalated after Waverly. You discovered that aggressive litigation generated more revenue than efficient litigation. A case that should settle in 6 months could be litigated for 2 years if you managed the timeline correctly. Motions, depositions, expert witnesses, amended complaints, appeals of interlocutory orders. Each step was legitimate. Each step was billable. Each step was unnecessary. Your annual billings hit $3.4 million. The firm's average was $1.8 million per partner. You were celebrated. The managing partner mentioned you by name at the annual retreat. You received a discretionary bonus of $180,000. Your colleagues didn't ask how you generated the numbers. They didn't want to know the same way you hadn't wanted to know when aldermen explained the economics 15 years earlier. The culture reproduced itself through selective blindness. A younger associate named Paulson was assigned to your team. She was 28, Columbia Law, the same intensity you'd had at her age. She questioned a billing entry during her second week, a research task you'd logged at 6 hours that she'd completed in 90 minutes. She asked if there was additional research she should have done that she'd missed. You told her the billing reflected the complexity of the issue, not the time spent on any single task. She nodded. She didn't understand, but she would. You'd make sure of it. Within a year, Paulson was billing 2,400 hours. She'd learned the language, task complexity, comprehensive review, thorough analysis, phrases that transformed 90 minutes into 6 hours without technically lying. You watched her adapt and felt something you chose to interpret as mentorship, but was probably something closer to reproduction. You were making another one of you. The bar complaint arrived on a Wednesday, not from a client, from Okonkwo, the solo practitioner from the Waverly case. She'd filed a grievance alleging discovery abuse and excessive billing practices. The complaint wasn't criminal, it was professional. The state bar's disciplinary board would review it, request your response, and make a determination. Most complaints resulted in dismissal. Some resulted in private reprimands. A few resulted in suspension. You hired an attorney to represent you before the bar, which was its own kind of irony. She reviewed the Waverly file and told you the billing was aggressive but defensible. The discovery tactics were within the bounds of zealous advocacy. The complaint would probably be dismissed. She charged you $15,000 for that assessment. The complaint was dismissed. Okonkwo was notified by form letter. You were notified by phone call. Your attorney congratulated you and sent a final invoice. You went back to work. Nothing changed. Nothing was supposed to change. The system had reviewed itself and found itself acceptable. But something had shifted. Not your behavior, your awareness. You'd seen the complaint. You'd read Okonkwo's words describing what you'd done to her client. The hours he'd spent in depositions answering questions designed to demoralize rather than inform. The financial pressure that forced him to accept a settlement that valued his integrity at less than your annual bonus. She'd written it plainly, without legal jargon, in language that sounded like testimony from someone who still believed the profession meant something. You didn't change because of it. You just noticed what you were doing with slightly more clarity, which made the doing of it slightly more uncomfortable, which made the wine at dinner slightly more necessary. 3 more years passed. Your billings held steady. Paulson made partner. She billed 2,800 hours her first year, a record for the firm. The managing partner mentioned her by name at the retreat. The cycle completed itself without your help. It didn't need you anymore. It had Paulson. Your daughter asked you at Thanksgiving what you actually did all day. She was 16 and had the specific cruelty of a teenager who senses inauthenticity the way animals sense weather. You told her you helped companies resolve disputes. She asked if you were one of the good guys or the bad guys. You said it wasn't that simple. She said that's what the bad guys always say. She went back to her phone. You poured another glass of wine and watched the football game without seeing it. You're 52 now. You'll make partner emeritus in 8 years if you maintain your billings. Your retirement account has $2.4 million. Your kids will graduate from college with no debt because you can afford tuition the way your clients can afford your invoices by not looking at the numbers too closely. You've been divorced for 5 years. You live alone in a house that's too large for one person and too expensive to sell in this market. You drink 2 glasses of wine every night, sometimes 3. The third glass is the one where you stop counting, which is fitting because your entire career has been built on the space between what's counted and what's real. Somewhere tonight, Okonkwo is still practicing. You looked her up last year. She's got a small firm now, 4 attorneys, employment law, representing the same kinds of people you spent your career grinding down. Her website says she believes the legal system should work for everyone. You read that sentence and sat with it for a long time, not because it was naive, because you used to believe it too, and you can't identify the specific moment you stopped. You bill another quarter hour. The document hasn't changed. The comma you added doesn't improve anything. But the billing system doesn't know that. It just records the time and multiplies it by $450 and adds it to a total that a client will pay, because the alternative is finding another firm that does exactly the same thing. The system doesn't need you specifically. It just needs someone willing to sit in this chair at 9:47 on a Friday night, adding commas to finished documents, logging hours that don't exist, building a life from the difference between the work that was done and the work that was billed. You close the document. You pour the third glass. You go home to a house that echoes. Your daughter's question sits in your chest like a comma you can't delete. Good guys or bad guys? You told her it wasn't that simple. She was right about what that means. You just weren't ready to hear it from a 16-year-old who who sees you more clearly than you've seen yourself in 18 years of billable hours.